This is Laura from PS Cover Design and Author Services, and today I'm working on formatting Dark and Deadly Things by Kelly Martin, getting it ready for ebook conversion. So this first video is going to be just setting up the file so it's nice and clean and ready to start the conversion process. So the first thing that we've got to do is check to see if the track changes are on, because that will have to be removed. You can see that there's a red line here, and that's telling us that there were changes made that didn't get reviewed. So I'm going to turn off my track changes. And accept all the changes that were made. Okay, the second thing you have to do when you're cleaning up is to remove all your headers and footers. Those do not come out right when you are converting, so they just have to be removed. So you check to see if there's any header, any footer, delete those, and then close it. Alright, the next thing I do is go ahead and resize the book for the correct sizes that we need. So I'm going to highlight everything, and I'm going to change my page layout. My margins need to be the narrow setting, so at ½ inch all the way around. And then I'm going to change the size of the page to a custom size of 6 by 9. Okay, that should pull you into a 2-page view. Now, one thing that you'll find is that every author will send you a different raw file, or they have different ways of doing things when they type. And Kelly, I've been working with her for quite a while, and she tries to make it as easy on me as possible by not adding in any of her own formatting. But one thing you do have to double check, and you should probably do this right away, is to make sure that there are no bookmarks. And you can see that she doesn't have any. When you click on that insert menu, the bookmark button, those bookmarks, if they have them, will be here. Those have to be removed because they don't read right in the conversion process either, and you'll get errors back, especially from places like Smashwords. Has a really particular way of things that need to be done. Okay, so since she's clear on bookmarks, we don't have to worry about that part. The next thing I do is I'm going to work with my style sheet and only have the things up here that I need and get rid of anything that I don't. Okay, for the normal, I'm going to modify that one so it follows what I want it to be, and I need a 12-point font here, and I like to use this Palatino Linotype. I'm going to go into my format paragraph window. My alignment needs to be full justified. There should be 0 points after spacing, and the line spacing should be single. I'm going to go into my line breaks and get rid of my widow and orphan control. So it'll end up like that. Actually, I do need to add in the indent. Okay, in normal you want that first line indent to ½ inch. Okay, now everything was set to normal here, so it automatically fixed it. Sometimes it won't do that. It depends on what kind of file you get from the author. I also use the heading 1, but I'm going to modify that one as well. I like to use the Felix titling on this one, and I have it be 16, and I take the bold off and change this to center. Now, because this style is based on normal, it would automatically give you an indent here, but you don't want that since you're centering. So you go back into the paragraph, and you're going to change the first line to none. And then your spacing should be a 12-point before and 3-point after. It gives it a nice spacing in between the chapter headings. Okay, and this is okay to have a keep with next. Sometimes I also see the keep lines together, and both of those are okay to be checked. Just make sure that your widow and orphan control is unchecked. Okay, we don't use the heading 2 in the style sheet, so I remove that one from the gallery, as well as the title and the subtitle. And most of these here can be removed. And some of them you'll have in yours already just by default, and others you won't. I do use the subtle reference, but I modify it. Now usually by default this will come up with a different font color, but we want to change that to the black automatic and to make it 12 point and give it the same font style as our normal. Okay, and then get rid of a few of these others. We're going to remove intense reference, book title, list paragraph, quote. I like to use the no spacing one, and this is sort of the alternative to the normal, so in places where I don't want it to indent automatically. So I'm going to take that one and modify it just to make sure that it's set up correctly. And you can see here that it does have an indent set in it, and I don't want it there. So I'm going to go in and take that off. And now if there's any paragraphs that I want out flush to the margin, I'll click no spacing for those. And I usually do that for the first paragraph of a chapter and the first paragraph after a scene break. Okay, now I've only got 4 things here, but there are 3 others that I'm going to need in order to format this correctly. So in order to do that, I need to click on this little arrow here to get the styles window to pop up, and then I'm going to go down to this button on the bottom that says new style and click that. Now the first one is going to be center, and I'm going to make sure that there's no italic on there. Okay, it should be center justified, still single spaced, but we want to make sure that the indent is turned off on this. Okay, and that should set that up correctly. So you hit OK. Now the next 2 are going to be based on center, so I want to leave this highlighted and then hit new style again. And for this one, I'm going to make it center bold. And I'm just going to hit the bold key to make that one change, then hit OK. Okay, again, I want the next one to also be based on center, so I'm going to highlight center and then hit add my new style. And for this one, it's going to be center italic. Okay, and this one I am going to click on the italic button. That's the only change I'm going to make, and hit OK. Alright, now I have 7 things that I work with in my style sheet. That is all I'm going to need, and that will help set this up correctly so that the conversion works very nicely. Okay, if you do not already have this quick tool up on your Word, you're going to want to add that in. And the way you do that, and this is the insert page and section break button. If you need to add new tools, you're going to use this pull down menu and go to more commands. When you click more commands, you're going to just scroll down until you find the insert page and section breaks and then add. Now since I already have mine in here, I'm not going to have to do that, but you would just hit add and then OK, and you would be good to go. Okay, this button is going to come in handy when we're separating the chapters. And you want to use the insert page and section breaks for the chapter divisions. Okay, you can see that she started out having these italicized and center justified, so we want to keep them that same way. We just want to make sure that they are using one of the style sheets. Okay, so we're going to click center italic to keep it that same way. Okay, now when she formats this, or when I format this, my chapter 1 heading has to be at the top of the page because the conversion will automatically do it if it sees that heading 1 style in there. So I am going to insert a page break here. So I'm going to click on my section break button, and you're going to go down to the section breaks here and then click next page and take out that top page enter. And I didn't mention this before, but one thing that you do want to do is turn on your coding so that you can see all the paragraph marks and other symbols. And that way you can see if there's an extra space in different places that they shouldn't be, or if it is set up as a soft paragraph return instead of a hard paragraph return, and so on. Now I like to capitalize everything in the chapter heading because when it converts it's only going to go into one main font, and so when I have Felix titling for my chapter headings, that won't translate when you're doing a digital book. It translates if you're doing print but not digital. So in order for those to stand out and just look nicer and more professional, we make them uppercase. Okay, and you can see that right now this is set as normal, but it needs to be heading 1. Okay, I do add an extra space in between my chapter heading and my first paragraph. And this is where we're going to use our no space because it just gives it a really nice professional look to have that first paragraph out to the edge. And then we're also going to add the subtle reference here. And I like to use the subtle reference on the first 6 words in that first paragraph. And that's not a hard and fast rule, but that's just the way I do it. So I highlight those first 6 words and click subtle reference. And I'm not reading anything at this point, I'm just scrolling down to find where the next chapter heading is. Kelly always puts everything all together in one big section, just to try to simplify things for me. So I am going to go through to each chapter and make sure that I get a section break in there. So here's my chapter 2. So I'm going to click on my section break next page. Again, I'm going to highlight that and change it to uppercase, and then heading 1. Add an extra paragraph return there. Click no space on the first paragraph. Highlight my first 6 words and make those subtle reference. Okay, now there's going to be a much quicker way to do this, and that is I can just go into my find menu and type in chapter. Sometimes my eyes will overlook the chapters as I'm scrolling through. And I'm just going to use this navigation menu on the left, click on chapter 3, put my cursor at the beginning, insert my next page section break, and then do what I need to the chapter heading and the first paragraph. Usually if it's just one line like this, there's actually 6 words in this one line, but I will often, if it's short like that, just subtle reference the entire line. Alright, here's a pretty obvious example of where there is a space that shouldn't be. These little dots are symbols of a space, and you can see that there's a dot in between each word. This space at the beginning, or this dot at the beginning, means there is a space at the beginning of this line, and we don't want any of those because it throws off the alignment. So one quick way to just get rid of all of the spaces that you don't want is to use your replace tool. So I click on replace, And in order to get the ones at the beginning of the paragraph that don't belong there, I'm going to type in a space and then one of these up arrows. Oh, that's not right. Okay. Actually, I'm not going to start with a space because that's the other way. So I'll show you that way in a minute. So in order to get rid of the space at the beginning of the period, you're going to do the up arrow and then a P, which is the symbol or the code for the paragraph break, and then type a space. Okay, and then you're going to go into the replace with, and you're just going to do the up arrow and the P for the paragraph, no space, and that should remove all of the instances of the space at the beginning of the paragraph. Okay, and it looks like she had 12 of those. We are going to do it one more time. We just hit replace all one more time to make sure that there's not places where there are multiple spaces at the beginning of paragraphs. And you want to do it until this comes back as we made 0 replacements. So there is a place where she has several spaces in a row. And so we're just going to keep hitting replace all until it changes to 0. Maybe I should just go there and see it. Yeah, that's going to take all day. So I'm just going to delete that entire line. Okay, so that was just a typing error at the very end. And sometimes you just have to go and find it. If it's, if you've already hit the button 5 or 6 times and it's still not coming back as 0, just hit find next and it will go to that place and you can see exactly how many spaces you're dealing with. Alright, now I started to show you the other way, and that is really a lot. This occurs a lot more often, and that is the space at the end of the paragraph. And so in that case, such as here, there's a space right before a paragraph. Now most of the time this is not a big deal, but when you're doing a conversion for digital, you want to make sure that everything is really clean, just so there aren't any glitches. So in the instance where there is a space before the paragraph break, those we're going to get rid of. So we're going to go back into the find what, and we're going to hit the space before the paragraph break and then replace with what we had before, just the plain paragraph break, and then replace all. Oh, I see what happened. I forgot to take that other space off. That's why. Okay, so you can see she did that a lot more times, 132 times that showed up. So I'm going to hit replace all again until it comes back as 0. Okay, and there's a chance that another one of those places has a lot of spaces, but just had one. Okay, so once we get that 0 replacement back, then we're good. Okay, and while I have this find and replace menu up, I'm going to go ahead and look at a couple other things that are very common errors and when the files come in to me. And the first one is the ellipsis that is not typed in as a true ellipsis. It's typed in as 3 separate periods. So in order to find those and replace them, in that find what, you're going to type in 3 periods. And in the replace with, you're going to type in our up arrow and an I. And that will replace it with a true ellipsis. Now, the problem in the conversion with 3 separate periods is that it could break in the middle of the ellipsis to go on to the next line if it comes to the end of the line. So you want to make sure that it's a true ellipsis so it will stay together, because it acts like one symbol instead of 3 separate symbols. Okay, and she had 32 of those, and that is a very common error. A lot of computers will automatically correct it to a true ellipsis, but some of them don't, and the tools are set not to have that happen. So you want to make sure you get those. And then I'm going to hit replace all again until I come back with 0. Okay, another common thing is that people hit tab. Somehow their indents get messed up, and so they'll use a tab instead of the indent that's already set. In order to get rid of those, in the find what, you're going to use the up arrow and a T, and you're going to place it with nothing. So you just delete everything that's in there, and then you hit replace all. Okay, and she didn't have any of those, but a lot of times they will, especially if there's a soft return. So if I were the author, and sometimes they'll hit Shift Enter, which will create a soft return, and you can see the symbol of soft return looks like a little bent arrow. It messes up the justification, and so it will space a line all the way out, and it messes up the indent on the following paragraph. So if you see any of those have to be removed, and in order to fix everything that we just unfixed. So to do that, you're going to highlight it and then hit enter, and then it will be good. Okay, as always, you want to save early and save often, because you never know when something's going to crash and you don't want to lose all the work that you did. So I'm going to go back to navigating my chapter headings, and we had stopped on 5, so I'm going to go back to 5. And remember that we are adding our next page section breaks first, and then we are capitalizing the chapter heading and changing it to a heading 1 style. Adding a paragraph return there, making it a no space paragraph, highlighting 6 words, and then use subtle reference. Okay, and I'm just going to go through and do these. She has 27 chapters. One other thing that you want to watch out for, because this just happens sometimes, and I've seen it often, is they'll get off on their numbering. So you want to double check to make sure that the chapter numbering is all correct and in sequence, like they don't double up on 2 chapter 19s or they skip a number. So you just double check that. Alright, now sometimes this will happen where they've actually used the word chapter in the text, so that one you can ignore and just move on to the next one. Okay, here's another example where that first line is really short. So I just do the subtle reference on both of those words. And if it's, anywhere between 1 to 6 or even 7 or 8, it looks weird if you have just one or two words that aren't in regular font or in subtle reference, so it's just best to do the whole line.